and welcome to Valoranting.
I do want to cuss. I personally think that is fucking bullshit. What can I do for you? What can I do for you? This is the best produced podcast I've ever been in.
Welcome to one of the best podcasts in the world, but the best for Valorant. You heard it from Golden Boy himself. He said it was the best produced, but he really meant the best in general. But no, I'm not Moses. No, Moses didn't get black and grow waves. My name is Velly. I'm going to be hosting this time around. I'm going to be here with a great friend and someone I've always wanted to work with. I'm going to welcome you all to Vansilli and also Sideshow. Josh, how are you feeling, man?
Dude, I'm doing good. You know, I'm legally obligated to not agree with your Overwatch, with your Valorant podcast take of this one being the best, but I will agree with Golden Boy. It's definitely the best produced.
Yeah, Vansilli, what's going on, man? How's your day so far?
So far, so good. Barely slept, but super excited for a weekly Valorant show. Also super excited to be working with you for the first time, as I tweeted before, and also with Sideshow. I mean, I've been watching with the role play you've been doing and also the Valorant videos you've been doing on YouTube. I realized we kind of did the same strategy for Cloud9 before, but thankfully I did mine a week before, so it doesn't look like I copied you. But super excited to talk about Valorant with both of you guys. Some fine gentlemen here tonight.
Yeah, so the things we're going to be talking about today, yes, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty about upcoming tournaments. Also, the PopFlash tournament, I'm pretty sure everybody at home have seen the groups. They're pretty juicy. I can't wait for that to go down. But first things first, patch notes are underway. They came out for patch 1.06. A few changes were made. Nothing too big, I guess, outside of Phoenix's flash. I'm wondering, have any of you two had issues with Phoenix's curveball as of late? Or not really?
I haven't really had issues with it, but I've noticed the same kind of issue that people were posting about on Reddit. It feels like it's like a latency thing, right? Like you throw the flash and you peek around the corner. But I think this patch is just one that's aimed at kind of nerfing Jet going on these crazy dash updraft kind of plays, because you see them all the time.
Yes, you see from a tweet here, everyone is talking about Phoenix's flash. Not only is it extended, but also you don't get flashed by it all the time. Vansilli, you wanted to talk. You have some thoughts about this?
Yeah, actually, to elaborate on that, if people weren't familiar with that bug or when it first came out on that patch, was like there was a screenshot from Korea where it went like miles away from where you threw it. So I was like, is this going to be the new meta where you're going to have to basically, let's say you're going to try to flash from B main into B on ascent, you're pretty much going to have to set up by the orb and then try to throw it around the corner. But by then, the person that's playing around the corner is going to hear that coming from a mile away. So it kind of nullifies it. I could turn up 360, 720, still turn back and still get a kill because I hear it from so far away. So I was like, is the new meta going to be, okay, I'm going to have to do a fake pop flash and have somebody peek at the same time and always have like this buddy system to entry into sites? But thankfully, long story short, it was a bug. It's sort of fixed now. I was trying to test it into regular servers about the sound cues and everything, but I haven't really seen that big difference. And also, it's more specifically with Breach, right? They were talking about how the sound cue is different for Breach with the flashpoints too. But when you're looking at ranked games, not many people play Breach. They don't really like playing Breach yet. I'm sure PopFlash is going to bring in this weekend too, especially players like Shazam that currently plays it as a Breach on Ascent. It'll be nice to see what changes that actually brings to that composition for the team. But I do agree with the shotgun for sure. The shotgun flying in the air was absolute nonsense. I still think that it's still too OP to still have Jet being able to updraft, dash behind you, and knife you while she has the Blade Storm, and you're still trying to do a 180 and look in the air. But when you're playing CS and you have low sensitivity, it takes you 5 years to be able to look up and aim correctly, and you're just dead still. It's a small nerf. It's not a big nerf. I still think it's a good start because even if you're not flying and you're not jumping, it's still as accurate, right? Because the penalty is only when you're jumping, if I'm not mistaken. At that
Exactly. I always felt like, so we saw with the pistols earlier on throughout the game's release where you could jump up with the pistol, you could right click and everything comes out accurate. They're getting rid of that when it comes to the shotgun as well. But there's something that I am actually personally excited to talk about. There's been some new skins on the horizon. It has been data mined by Fox A And not the Rainbow Six Pro, by the way. But holy shit, this is beautiful. And I'm just going to say it outright. I think Riot found their bread and butter when it came to gun skins that have purple on it. Because it is beautiful. Yo, Sideshow, are you like Golden Boy? Did you spend thousands of dollars on skins in this game yet?
No, I have never really bought skins in any game that I've played. I'm not interested in cosmetics whatsoever. I see skins like that and I'm like, okay, it looks a bit like the Milky Way, I guess. It's cool. And they don't really do anything for me personally. I bought the first skins in this game a while back. I bought the fox ones just because I like the animal. But apart from that, I haven't bought any of the other skins. They look kind of cool, those nebula ones. They're kind of flashy.
Yeah, Vansilli, I have to ask, are you a skins guy or no?
Au contraire, for me, I actually bought the whole package because I was like, holy crap, a Sheriff Nebula, that looks fucking beautiful. I need to get it. I'm also a Phantom user. I have pretty much all the Phantom skins already, and I had to buy that as well. So I was like, well, if I already bought those 2 skins, I might as well get the knife too. Let's just get the whole bundle. The only groups of skins that I haven't bought so far is the glitch pop, the one that just passed before, because it didn't have any of the main guns that I usually use. But I told myself and I vowed to myself that I wasn't going to buy skins anymore because I have to think about a house. I got to think about my wife. I got to think about settling down. And I'm still spending skins. Riot is doing such a good job to always set me back into it. But this is going to bring it back to the same thing for me. It's if I'm going to be at some point having so many skins, for example, the Elder Flame is like a mistake for myself that I actually bought as a series, as a group. I want to find a way where I could maybe refund them and then get other skins or something like that too, right? I don't necessarily need to have the money back, but if I can invest it into something else, get like a rebate on other skins, I'd love to do that because I don't use those skins.
Yeah, we had a conversation about this, I believe, a month ago between Pansy, Moses, and I, and it had to do with the gambling or whatever. I'm not too versed in that because I wasn't a CS guy like you, Alex, right? So apparently it's bad and illegal in a big way, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think when it comes to betting, it could bring, like, we always talk about toxic chat in Twitch and Reddit. It gets even worse when it gets to skin betting. Like, you have worse death threats and stuff like that too as a player. As a commentator, as just somebody who's a fan in general. Yeah, man, it brings the worst out of everybody. It's like, oh, how much did you lose on skins? And it just triggers people. And then everybody's like a keyboard internet warrior and everybody's just bitching at themselves. But there is one thing about it in skins. I wasn't necessarily a gambler for skins either. I never gambled for skins in CSGO. But I did recently held on to some skins since 2014. So the Katowice stickers from 2014, the major, I have holo stickers, and I sold a few of them, and I made like $6 grand on 5 stickers.
What?
The value on skins is, yeah, it was crazy. I actually, and just to sidetrack like a little bit too. Yeah, exactly. I have an LDLC skin, a holo from Katowice 2014 on a stupid pistol, like a USP that's worth like 5 cents, for example. And it's on the handle. So depending where you put the sticker to, it's the value the sticker could maintain or not. So it's on the handle, and I've lost 97% of its value. And it's worth 9,000 Canadian. 9,000.
Yeah, I need to know. I'm going to download Counter-Strike. That's and it all has to do with your sticker placement.
Well, sticker placement, or even before you place them. So that's the difference too from the skins that you have from CS and the skins that you have, for example, with Valorant, is that CS, you basically open a key, you open a box, or you open a sticker capsule, and you hope for the best, and you hope to get a very rare drop. And more specifically, when you're looking at the majors and the holo stickers that I've had, it's a once in a lifetime. So once you pass that event, and you're moving later on into the years, and then you just have a bunch of Chinese collectors that just love putting expensive stickers on expensive guns. They're looking for the rarity, for the scarcity, and for those type of stickers. That's why the value just skyrockets. But for example, in Valorant, everybody could buy the skin. Nobody could trade it. There's no like exclusive skins. Maybe someday with the majors, but I doubt that they're gonna do or go down that route. I know kind of Dota does, but I don't know if League of Legends does that with the Worlds. I haven't been following that portion of the skins and stuff like that too. But it's something interesting. But I'm happy, at least for Valorant, that it doesn't have it for now, because it would be way too toxic.
It's actually pretty insane. And talking about some exciting stuff right now. We're talking about skins and patches, everything else. Let's go right into roster moves, okay? This roster move that I'm going to bring up first has been extremely interesting for the simple fact that Cloud9 not only has a team in NA now, but they're moving over to Korea. They picked up a roster. You see the names on your screen. Now, the reason why this is pretty interesting to me, Vansilli has had time in Rainbow Six along with me, and there was an interview where Cloud9's president, Dan Fiden, he says, Cloud9 makes more money for Rainbow Six than we do in CS right now. Sideshow, I know you know a lot about different regions and whatnot. You know a lot about just the ins and outs of esports and the workings of it. How do you personally feel about this Cloud9 pickup?
I think it's a bit of a strange one, honestly, because Cloud9 had a great opportunity to build the #1 team in North America. They have the best player in North America, perhaps the world, on their roster. And they've they've straight up failed to build a good team around tens. And I personally think they've lost out on that chance. Now, perhaps that was because they're heavily invested in building a good team over in Korea. But Korea feels like it hasn't quite taken off yet. When you look at the popularity of the game in the PC bongs, and you look at the amount of teams that are being signed and the amount of players that are playing in tournaments and the competition level, I haven't done a deep dive into the Valorant scene in terms of watching a bunch of VODs and stuff like that. I've only looked very vaguely at Vision Strikers and Mad. Mad was the team where a bunch of these players came from to join the Cloud9 Valorant team. But it seems like it hasn't quite had its not peak, but it's big moment yet. So I feel like Korean Valorant is still very much in a developmental stage right now, and signing a roster indicates you want to get in early for sure, a bit like the T1 Korean team, but you're probably still going to have to make some roster moves and some different kind of evolution of the team in the future anyway, because the Korean scene isn't fully developed yet. It hasn't got everybody playing it. They haven't attached themselves to this game in the same way that, like, for example, Japan has, where they've got a shit ton of teams out there trying to play the game all the time. So you have this constant blend of talent going on. So for me, it seems like Cloud9 have almost rushed into both of these scenes and split their attention and ended up perhaps not getting the best of what they could have had in either place. I mean, if you have tens on your assigned to your organization and you're not the #1 team, or not even attempting to be the #1 team in North America, then you've kind of failed as an organization to put a good team together there. And then when you look at Korea, I hope that this team is going to be good. I know some of the players from the Overwatch League as well, but dabbling in both areas, especially because Cloud9 have made, especially in the Overwatch League recently as well, very significant inroads into looking towards the Korean base and looking at developmental talent and stuff like that. It feels to me like Cloud9 as an organization, from what I know, would tend more heavily in that direction. But I don't know whether they have the brain bandwidth to be able to do both properly.
And it's really weird because while you were talking, I was thinking about it, okay? You have teams that they're waiting to sign their first NA or EU roster. They're taking their time to look at the best players available, right? But you look at teams like T1 and Cloud9, both very big organizations. They're lackluster at the moment with their placements, and they're now going overseas to sign a roster. Now, Alex, is that a play that you think is smart in their end, developing a fan base overseas, I guess, to drag on over back to NA or EU whenever your team is settled? Or what do you think is the plan behind this? Do you think it's a smart one?
I think it's good, right? When you're looking at Valorant so far, everybody's just signing teams where it's very subjective, with the exception of maybe G2 and TSM, of who's that #1 team right now in the world, in North America, in Europe, et cetera, et cetera. So you're kind of just laying the land. You're trying to build up the scene first. And once things start getting established, I mean, we don't really have a circuit of events yet, right? We can't even freaking go to LAN yet. So that means that you're just going to compete online. You're just going to try to at least get your name of the name of the organization out there. And once we have something that's more established as a circuit and stuff like that too, I wouldn't be surprised when you're starting to see organizations starting to blow up, poach, and even starting to see international moves. Because even look at it with the situation with COVID, you can't really bring North American players to Europe and vice versa, just due to the fact of the reality that we're currently in right now. So I think it's a good way to start. And then later on, we'll see in a year or two, everything's going to blow up right after. For Korea in itself, and for Korea in itself, I do like it, because Korea, like Sideshow was saying, there's no established scene yet, and we haven't really seen like a big ignition series that builds up the community or the competition for Korea, and have always been good at like kind of doing their own thing. I mean, look at StarCraft with GSL and stuff like that too. So when you're looking at the format of, for example, the Clan Masters, it's an online circuit, and then you have LAN, I think, at some point, if I understand that correctly. So you kind of have your own little ecosystem of competition in there, and you know how big esports already is in Korea with being on TV and stuff like that too. So maybe the idea is now more of a branding thing in a closed circuit with what they currently have as a setup with the Clan Masters until we figure out what happens after. And that's you have
that's a good point.
Yeah, sorry.
I think that generally it makes sense if they're trying to establish a base in Korea and become a name that they try and attract other talent to. But that's the only way in which it makes sense, because if they're really set on this roster, if Valorant does blow up in Korea, if it becomes a popular game that a lot of other people want to play, then it's going to attract way more talent. And just inevitably, it's a numbers game. That talent that comes in is going to be better than the talent that exists currently. Because once you have, 6 times more players playing the game, you're not going to be able to stay at the top. The current teams that are playing, some former Alpros, this kind of stuff, they're going to be good, but they're probably not going to be the best teams that you could possibly create. So I agree with you in some sense, Vansilli, that it only really makes sense for me from Cloud9's point of view if they're just trying to establish themselves as a name in Korea to attract talent if the game blows up. But that doesn't particularly bode well for like the current roster. It means that kind of analysis is almost pointless in some sense, because it only is a smart business decision if you're willing to make changes in the future.
Mm-hmm. No, you're definitely right. And speaking about their... Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Velly.
Grab the wheel, man.
And let's not really push it too far out to say that Cloud9 is like absolute shit, because at this point they could still put up good numbers, right? When you're stepping away from that number 1 TSM, who's the number 2, who's the number 3, I could still believe that it could be anybody from the Cloud9 to the Gen G to the Immortals or to the Sentinels. So that's my take on that part too, where like we've had the game out for about 2 months and a half now. We've had 4 maybe ignition series, going on to a 5th one at the end of the month. There's not that many tournaments right now that actually allows you to say who's that real number 1 at that point in North America, except maybe subjectively on TSM. But if you're looking at the talent pool and players that are out there, though, Sideshow, and you want to think about building a North American team, besides those that are already signed right now, who would you take at that point, right? There's no scouting abilities either.
I think there definitely is. I think that Cloud9 missed an enormous trick because they just signed a bunch of friends together to the roster. I mean, the phrase tens and friends could not be more accurate. I mean, you go and you look back at these guys' CS histories. They all played together in the past. They had no attempt to actually scout properly. They didn't try and build a good team around tens. They built players that were comfortable playing with him. They attached a Shinobi, the shot caller, to him, and Mitch and Vice, and these guys that had already played for a long period of time with the guy. Relics, I don't think had, but he was like a guy that had been hovering around for a while. And they massively missed a trick. I mean, they could have signed Homeless with tens. That would be a better team than Cloud9 is currently. Because the system around tens has not been structured properly. I think that it was. And it's not just Cloud9 that's done this, by the way. A bunch of different teams did this, like 100 Thieves, for example, where they just picked up a roster without putting any thought into the construction of that roster. But for me, Cloud9 particularly hurts because they have the best team in they have the best player, in North America on that roster. They already had them signed to the organization, and he's potentially the best player in the world. And so if you have a player like that, if they built properly around him, they would certainly be up there with the Sentinels, with the TSMs, with a team that was constantly trying to make grand finals. Whereas Cloud9, they're occasionally making second place, but most of the time they look like they lack the strategic base and they lack the team coordination. And they're also statistically the most hard carried team in North America. If you take tens out of that roster, they have the lowest kill per round from all of the rest of their players. So that's why it annoys me. And that's why Cloud9 is an organization. I'm getting a little like these like whiffs of maybe they spent a bit too long splitting their attention between the two scenes. It's just concern for the future for me, because I really do believe that if they had gone all in on North America and tried to build a great roster, we would be seeing Cloud9. We would be talking about a TSM Cloud9 or a Sentinels Cloud9 kind of rivalry. Whereas we're not. We're talking about TSM Sentinels. So I think they really missed a trick there. And I hope that the Korea aspect pays off, because if it doesn't, they could well just be left with two fairly mediocre teams in both regions.
Sideshow, you was definitely on one right there, and you touched up on another thing I was going to bring up. I'm gonna run through the other roster pickups. Vice is on Cloud9. Of course, he's had a history with Cloud9 from CS:GO when Rogue disbanded. Now he's on Cloud9 for good with Relic, Shinobi, Tins, and friends. Right. C9's last placement was third at the Nice Invitation, where they failed at TSM. Before that, they got top 6. So is this roster change exactly what they needed? I'm not sure. But that argument that you pointed out, Josh, about if they picked up Homeless and added Tins to that roster, we could have been talking about the TSM versus Cloud9 type of scenarios, some type of rivalry with that. That's going to be even more interesting for the fact that Dignitas picked up Homeless. And for those of you that are new to Valorant, you're not sure, Dignitas, that team is pretty damn good. Top 4 at the PAX Arena Invitational, also top 6 at the Nice Invitational. Some notable names. I'm personally a favorite of Superman. I love Psalm. The 5th is going to be determined. I mean, that could have been Tins, right? But moving along, Rogue also signed Need More DM. Notable placements from them are getting top 4 from the We Play Invitational, losing to G2. But overall, this team, they have a pretty solid track record. I'm going to give a personal shout out to Halo of Thoughts, Aaron. He covers a multitude of games. His articles are really interesting, and it comes from his personal point of view, which is kind of refreshing. He doesn't really care about being politically correct. But in regards to all these team changes, any last words both of you gentlemen want to get off your chest?
Yeah, I mean, just to touch on the Rogue situation for a moment, I don't think this pickup makes any sense either, because they're picking up Need More DM that have already lost their star player. I Need More DM either kicked or he left. I don't know what the situation was anyway, but Buzzed, their Raze player, who was frequently dropping outrageous kind of performances against genuinely good teams, has left the team, split apart from them. And then Rogue wants to sign the rest of the players. Like these are the kind of organizational moves that I just don't understand. It's like the players in the orgs are unwilling to try and mix and match between the teams. Europe is so much easier for an organization to make a super team out of, because there's less orgs out there anyway. So you could mix and match and you could make a genuinely great team. There's like Bonk, there's Prodigy, there's a bunch of other teams as well that don't have an organization to them. Prodigy is like an agency rather than an org, and Bonk isn't one at all. You could make a good team just by picking apart the pieces and putting them together with a bunch of free agents. So it doesn't make sense to me that they would sign a Hungarian team without the Hungarian star player that was previously carrying them. It doesn't make sense.
I try to make sense of it every week, Sideshow, but the more and more we look at these orgs that are picking up just these weird teams, or they'll pick up 4 players and then add. They would do the 100 Thieves, right? They'll pick up the PUBG guys and then throw in a Hiko. It doesn't make sense to me. Why split up an already successful team and not give them a chance to really prove themselves? Because me personally, as a former professional gamer, I've always had the belief that if you have an organization backing when supporting you, the stress from that is just going to be gone. It's going to be off your shoulders, and you'll be able to play to your full potential. And then we can see a week, a month from then, if you can reach the stars like you promised that organization. But the fact that they're doing that is extremely, I don't know the word about it. I don't know the word for it, but it's extremely odd. But hey, who knows? Maybe they can surprise us. Alex, any last thoughts about these recent roster changes?
No, I actually didn't even know about what Josh was saying, that their key player actually left the roster too. So that's already a big red flag. Actually, you're pouring a lot of money into it, and I guess it goes down to what Josh was saying too. It's like you're a known, established organization. You're pouring a lot of money to start off a roster, and you're already starting off on the wrong foot. And that's going to be like an in and out for an organization's perspective to be like, we tried it, it didn't work, we lost some money, and now is it worth it for us to continue and pursue that? And that's just probably the wrong way to see it. So when we're talking about scouting and trying to learn a little bit more about players and teams, maybe it's something that organizations need to do as well, just to make sure that they start off with the right foot and not tarnish the scene in a sense that you've lost the opportunity to sign a good team, and that team that had the opportunity to get signed is not signed anymore, and they blow up, and then the scene just slowly dies out. So it's a sword with a double-edged sword at that point, where both of these parties really have to communicate with each other to sell themselves, I guess, at that point too.
I do really like the Dignitas pickup though.
The Dignitas pickup is amazing. I personally feel like Homeless are definitely a sleeper. They can definitely be a top 4 team in my personal opinion. So seeing where they go, pending what's going to happen with that roster down the line is going to be extremely fun. But speaking of fun, tournaments that are currently coming up, we have the AW Pro Invitational out there in Japan. It's going to be from August 31st to September 21st. Now, this is a qualifying tournament for their main event. The top 4 teams will go to the Asia Invitational. Now, some of the invited teams so far.
Why are they using
so funny,
Comic Sans, Velly? Why are they using Comic Sans in their like, why? Every time I look at why are they writing it in Comic Sans? I assume I just don't get it. I mean, I just don't get it.
I will say this, before this, every other APAC poster for an event has been pure fucking flames. It's been amazing.
Yeah,
this is the oddest one so far. I don't get it. I don't understand. But some of the invited teams so far, Fave Gaming, Cyclops, Norango, and Absolute Jupiter is a team that everyone should always keep an eye on. Are any of you well versed in just their background and what they've been doing so far?
Just
currently like the G2 in their region. Yeah. Excuse me?
Yeah, go on, Valorant.
Go ahead, Josh.
Oh, how about this? I'm going to call it out. I'm the desk host. Go, Josh.
Yeah, I've been watching some of Absolute Jupiter. They seem to be pretty dominant within their region, but I think it's one of those situations where Japan seems to be fairly involved. Like they've really taken a liking to Valorant in a way that I haven't personally seen from any large PC game that PC FPS game in recent times. So I think that Japan is a scene where if they can put together another rival team to be able to contest Absolute Jupiter, because I think they lost their first map a while back or something. Yeah, in the grand finals of the previous tournament, it was one of the first times they'd ever been contested and they lost a map. Since then, I mean, I'm looking at the match history for Absolute Jupiter. I'm not sure when the previous time when they lost a map was. So they're a good team. For sure, but it certainly seems like, just from an overview of the scene, that they're dominating the region in maybe somewhat of an unhealthy way at the moment. Not that it's a bad thing for Absolute Jupiter. Of course, you want to see them win and succeed and look great, but they don't have a rival and they don't have the strength and skill in the rest of the competition in Japan to be able to kind of push the entire scene upwards. So that's really what I'm waiting for. That, I think, will be the watershed moment for Japan, is when they create a second best and a third best team to be able to have some kind of rivalry and have a real ecosystem rather than Absolute Jupiter just dominating everything.
But isn't that currently what G2 are doing in Europe? I mean, they pretty much rolled over just about it. They beat the shit out of everybody's Sideshow. And now you're starting to see the liquids. Though. No, you're right. You're right. Yeah, this is just a blowout. Look at the screen. Jesus Christ.
This is Absolute Jupiter are literally winning every map, and they're winning a lot of the maps 13-4, 13-6, 13-8. Yeah, it's rare that you see another team get even into the double digits against them. So this isn't a G2 situation. This is truly one elite team, and the rest are trying to play catch up. But once they do get catch up, or once they do get caught up, rather, I think that the Japanese scene should be looking pretty healthy.
You're right. Alex, what were the words you want to say, man?
No, nothing to add to that. It was basically to say that they just keep dominating everything on their end in Japan, and they have zero competition. So take that advantage and get rich out of it until somebody catches up to you. Because right now, you're just on cloud nine. Literally, just I'm going to hop in a server. They could pug it out and still win at this point. I mean, having that CS:GO background from those guys are just destroying everybody. So,
and also,
I have nothing else to add for that.
The other part is that at some point, the COVID situation is going to die down, and Japan is going to be able to play against other regions as well. So that will allow them to continue to develop themselves without really needing a Japanese rival. So it's not necessary, especially when you consider that the ping isn't really enormous from what I understand between like Japan and South Korea. I could be talking complete nonsense here because I've never been to either country.
Someone Google it.
I don't think it's crazy, but it might be.
I'm Googling it right now, but also coming up next, you have the... Yeah, let me know what you find, Alex. Oh, the Mill Down Masters are going to be coming up as well. You're going to see a lot of familiar faces from the previous tournament we were just talking about, the AU Pro Invitational. You're going to see Cyclops, well-known Orgs, and Goku. But once again, Absolute Jupiter, Collection Troin. This is actually a pretty big event. There's 2.5 million yen on the line. And for those of you that are not as cultured as myself, that's about $23,000. That's some really good money. But the tournament, I am extremely excited about outside the PopFlash tournament. The level 2 Clash EU is going to be coming up. You're going to have FunPlus Phoenix, a team that I have gone on the record and said I believe that they're going to be a solidified top 2 team, and they're going to leave Liquid out the mix if they develop and happen to watch corners. You're going to have G2, Liquid, NIP, pretty much everyone else we would expect in a high-tier European tournament. Alex, I usually call on you second. For this type of event, do you think this is where G2 finally gets run for their money? Do you think they're finally going to get got? Is this going to be it?
No, I still think G2 is going to put another one under their belt. Yeah, at this point too. And actually, I just wanted to take a quick step back. Big shout out to Darkoplax that's saying the thing is sporty between Korea and Japan. And just to add on to that too, because we're always saying like we hope LAN, we hope this, we hope that we get to play within different scenes, different countries. And if it becomes an APAC again, I just hope that these Asian teams are going to be able to beat the Australian teams, because when I'm looking at it from a CSGO's perspective, or I'm looking from a Rainbow Six perspective, I always see like the Fnatic of Australia kind of like winning that side, or I'm kind of seeing like the Greyhound or like the Renegades now in North America were dominating that scene before, and we never really had a chance to see Asian teams really just dominate that whole APAC scene. So I want to see an Asian team in Valorant be good versus Australian teams too once we get to that point, and we are able to compete between those countries.
Yeah, so Josh, you're looking at pretty much I said it before on the show just to make fun of Moses because he hates Halo, but I said this is starting to develop into a final boss, carbid, and straight ripping type of rivalry going on between Liquid, FPX, and also G2. Do you think the overall rankings are going to change anytime soon this event? Like I've said before, it might be a hot take. I believe FPX can possibly win this event plus more in the future. In the soon future, matter of fact, before Liquid can even get another chance in the grand finals.
I agree with your take, Velly. I don't think
what?
That it'll be this.
That was outlandish.
No. I really believe in FPX. I think this is a fantastic team. I think if you were watching Party Pirates and Fabricant, the teams that came together to form FPX, you have to be incredibly excited about the potential of FunPlus Phoenix. I think they have a higher potential than Liquid, but at the moment, Liquid have much better fundamentals, the support for each other. They're just a very methodical team, and occasionally Scream can just go berserk mode and beat G2 on a certain map. The problem with that rivalry at the moment is that G2's style is so much more intuitive and based on the reads of their opponent, and Liquid are quite a readable team because they're so methodical. So the only way I personally ever see Liquid winning a BO3 over G2 is if they have Scream just have Scream and Link, actually, because Link, now that he's become the primary AWPer, is starting to have a much bigger role in the fragging on that team. But if those two have a ridiculous series, they could beat G2. But it's a little bit of a far kind of thing, because Scream would have to put up one of his outrageous performances across a BO3 or even a BO5 to be able to win a tournament against G2. FunPlus Phoenix, though, I think if you give them enough time, they will be able to be the true rivals to G2. I have a lot of hope and faith in this team. They've got a great calling structure that comes from Angel. Angel's also a pretty good fragger. Their ability to be able to surprise their opponents and change things up, from the incredibly aggressive raw rifling from Zipan, who's arguably the best raw rifler in the world, and no one is talking about him when it comes to the larger world scene. You've got Zipan there, who's just insane firepower. Shao is another guy who should be a star on a team, but he's actually secondary because Zipan is so good. And the entire team is gonna develop this structured style the longer they play together, the better they're going to be, because I've seen it with Party Pirates. I've seen it with Fabricant. Both teams are pretty good tactically. So I don't think it's going to be this tournament, Velly. I think they need a bit more time to develop that kind of structure together, because they're not a very loose team. They're aiming to be slow, execute-based, trying to read their opponent, playing the defaults to punish G2's aggression. But at some point, I do believe that they're going to be the ones to knock G2 off the top.
Alex, I thought I had a pretty like one-of-a-kind hot take, but apparently, you know, other people in the world actually agree with me for once in my life. So when it comes to this EU competition, Vansilli, what do you think? Like, what is your take for this event? What are you expecting? Are you expecting the usual G2 runs the tables, they dominate, you know, can scream, continue to put up, you know, crazy stat lines to help this team win? What is your take? What's going to happen?
I still think it's probably going to be the very similar storylines right now. I don't think G2 is going to necessarily just dominate the whole tournament, but I still believe that G2 is going to win this one too. I do agree with what Sideshow is saying from his analysis of the team of Fun Plus Phoenix, and that slow methodical play is a very usual play into like the CIS scene for like CSGO, playing very slow, going to execute at the last seconds into a round. And I love to see the development of this team. I mean, I haven't watched enough of EU to be able to get my hot take of how that's going to go, but just based on results and on comfort of how G2 is so far, I still think they're looking good to. I mean, they have artists, man, and they have artists like the loudest guy that's going to be able to hype up the team at any moment of the day. They're just going to ride off that hype and just destroy everybody too.
I love artists to death, man.
Yeah,
so
Artis is fantastic. Artis is maybe the best personality at the beginning of any esport that I've looked at. It's insane.
You need an artist.
Yeah, I love him.
Like,
fantastic.
So what G2 has done for Valorant has been just as big as a rivalry in NA, in my opinion, because now you have that shit-talking guy on that #1 team that says, listen, NA, shut the fuck up. I could point out 2 bad players on every roster. This is it. He is the villain that everyone wants to beat now, and I absolutely love it. But moving along, because we spent a lot of time there. Reddit. we all know how Reddit is. So we did a series last time around, the good, the bad, the ugly. We're playing around with the names. So we're gonna try this time around. Radiant Noob and the downvoted. So let's look at the Radiant, right? Throw it on production. Let's see what they have for us. Basically, this is just, you know, a solid citizen of the world, just praising Riot and the Valorant developing staff about how unique each hands are. They're talking about how great they're doing with skins and whatnot, right? This seems pretty nice, right? This is what we like to see on Reddit.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think
it's the small
things. I think I've played with this guy before. He's
really?
My teammate that's just always looking at the hands instead of looking at the guys that are running in. And then he dies and he's like, oh, but the artwork's so good.
Yes. So this is it's one of the nice guys. Let's take a look at Noob. All right, let's see. This isn't chaotic evil yet, but what a stupid thing to post. This game is unplayable due to hit resh. Well, let's suck on dead fingers. And then you see the response. I'm sorry, but this is hilarious. How do you post something like that under a wholesome thread? What type of person are you to do that?
Just the idea of sucking on someone's fingers is kind of gross.
You don't do that? You don't do that?
No, I'm not big into sucking on people's fingers to thank them for doing game development. I mean, that's not how we roll in Overwatch. That's all I'm saying. I mean, if that's something you guys want to start in Valorant, then be my guest. But I'm dipping. I'm out of there.
Yeah, I mean, Vansilli, you're not down with the kink. You know, the developer makes a good skin. You lick their pinky and tell them thank you. No. All right.
Maybe on a Thursday, but but not usually. No.
So this is it. This is the downvoted, and I'm almost scared to show the chat this, but let's take a look. I like the game's hands. Kind of attractive, to be honest. Now, you don't think that anything bad can come from that, but just use your imagination, Sideshow. What do you think was deleted?
So I don't like to kink shame, but I feel like the moderators of this subreddit probably did. There's some people are weird, you know. There's no imagining the depths of people's depravity on the internet. It's impossible.
Can you imagine someone in Overwatch Reddit talking about, I see it in the chat, sucking on Winston's fingers?
Yeah, they talk about sucking on Sigma's toes, unfortunately, which is even worse.
Oh my God.
We've got a character that doesn't wear shoes, so his toes are just out all the time. I don't know why. It can't be good.
I'd rather have the conversation about fingers now instead of toes.
Yeah.
Just either way, why can I not be part of a scene that isn't obsessed with people's tiny appendages at the end of their limbs?
It's because of you. You brought it here, Sideshow. You brought it here. I swear to God. But ladies and gentlemen in the chat, so far, yeah, it's been a lot of fun. We still have a lot to go through, including we're going to be talking about Clan Masters, the PopFlash Invitational, and also WTF Moses' interview with Monty. I haven't listened to it yet, but I'm so excited. We're going to have a short break, and we'll be right back. Make sure to stick tight. We'll see you soon. All right, all of you beautiful people on YouTube and also the Twitch chat, I want to say welcome back to Valoranting. Once again, I'm your host, Velly. I'm here. I'm finally working with my man, Vansilli, and also we have Sideshow with us. But let's talk about Clan Masters for a second. Now, this event made me extremely jealous because, fellas, what do we live for working in esports? We live for LANs, right? This event was a LAN. There was no audience. You had just the on-air talent, also the professional players. I thought it was pretty cool. The desks, they had their outfits coordinated. You know, on the outside, they wore striped ties and white coats. In the middle, they wore a red coat. It was pretty fun. It was pretty cool. But Vision Strikers, once again, dominated the competition, along with their 3-1 win against No Mercy. Now, not to say No Mercy, they're a terrible team because they lost whatever, and they got pretty much smacked up by Vision Strikers along with everyone else, but they breezed their way to the grand finals with a 4-0 map lead into the playoffs. Same thing with Vision Strikers, but they dominated their competition as well. The only team they had a problem with happened to be the greatest out there. Now, Sideshow, I know you know a lot about these teams overseas. Do you know much about Vision Strikers? And if so, what do you say about their dominance? You know, we just got done talking about, you know, in Japan, what's going on over there, G2 and whatnot. Yeah. Can Vision Strikers go in the same box? Are they in the same category?
They're pretty similar. I mean, I don't think that they, from what I've seen, it doesn't seem like they're as dominant. They seem to, just looking at the stats, because I haven't done a deep dive into the Korean scene either, it seems like they tend to lose bind quite a bit. That seems to be the only map at which they're particularly touchable, even by the other teams that are like making the grand finals against them. I'm not familiar with the backstory of this team either, like where the players have come from and stuff. I've been more looking at the other Korean scenes, the other Korean teams that have former Overwatch League players on. But I think that the Korean scene has yet to have this big moment where Korea as a culture really takes off with Valorant, because it's, you know, it's been having issues at PC bongs and we haven't seen the most teams play it. So I think that if that does happen, then Vision Strikers will see a lot more competition against them.
Yeah, and there's also some familiar faces that we saw. Some people that you know. Vat Kimchi apparently has Overwatch pros. Who are they, and how good are they? Are they nice?
Yeah. So while Cloud9 has Bazi and Munchkin, who are two Overwatch League professional players that were like pretty decent level hit scan players, the Vat Kimchi team has an Overwatch League, or a former Overwatch League coach as well, called Taerong, who used to work for the Houston Outlaws. He never had that much success, but he was always pretty well respected within the league, a very hard worker as well, and has a background playing actually TF2, which is the same place that I came from. And there are two Overwatch League Overwatch players on this team, Flower and Climax. Flower, previously known as like Nano Hannah and stuff like that. He was one of the players that was everyone was extremely excited to see him play in the league eventually for the New York Excelsior. He was a young guy that played in the World Cup teams, but when he played in the league, he had nerve issues, I think, and wasn't ever quite able to live up to the expectations of what was capable for him. But he was a very skilled, talented player. Now, from what I remember as well, though, he had really high sensitivity and used to like flick shot all around the place. He was really good at the hit scan as well as the projectile, but I'm not exactly sure how well that's going to be able to translate. But I like I said, I haven't done a deep dive into them. I can't really speak to his or Climax's ability within Valorant, but it's interesting to see them make that change over.
And it was on Bring Back International Lands. I can't wait. But the Pacific Open in Vansilli, this is for you, okay? This is another event at Riot's attempt at developing its grassroots events overseas. And it turned out to be pretty much successful so far at this point. And they're pretty fun, so to say. Now, these smaller tournaments with the Ignition Series, they've had a ton of activity. And we saw this one feature one of my all-time favorites in esports. Shout out to James Banks. Vansilli, how do you feel about these grassroots tournaments up to this point? Now, we've had a pretty big sample size of them. Would you say it's a success so far? And if there were room for improvement, what would it be?
That's actually a really good question. Room for improvement, I wouldn't really know, because when we're actually, you know what? When we're looking at Ignition Series for at least this one here, again, Southeast Asia or Pacific Open, it's not something that I've been really watching so far. But just to see that we're able to promote the scene through Ignition Series, to get some eyes on there, anything that helps promote the scene globally is great, right? We talked about skins before, and we talked about the hands. We talk about how cartoony things are. Mainly for Riot, they're trying to make a game that's very marketable worldwide too, right? If you're looking at CS 1.6 or CSGO in Germany, for example, you have to be 16 and over and be like in an enclosed area that has ceilings like 10 feet high, that doesn't allow other general public to get in, because it's bomb terrorists, counter terrorists. So now that you have a game that's marketable for the whole scene, that could actually be internationally marketable too, and you're promoting it through the Ignition Series as well, I think it's nothing but a plus. I mean, when you're also looking at North America, you have like the Nurse Street Gamers, you have the Pittsburgh Knights, you have like all these local lands, or tournaments rather, that are happening currently that helps build this grassroots kind of thing. And I also love the fact that with the Ignition Series at first, or even with the Twitch Rivals, it was all about invited teams, and it was all about streamers and stuff like that too. But now that you have Ignition Series and you have spots that are open through qualifiers to allow these grassroots teams to also get in and compete and get their name known and hopefully upset, but not at that part yet, it's beautiful to see. Just one step back though, onto Vision Strikers, just to let you guys know that they actually have experience on CSGO. So they used to be known as MVP PK. They were pretty decent, okay, I guess, in the Korean scene when it comes to Counter-Strike. But when it came down to like Southeast Asia, they lost a lot to like the Tylus and stuff like that too. But it comes back to that storyline of when you're always having a new developing scene for Valorant so far in whatever region, it seems as though CS experience always seems to be the head start for everything.
Yeah. And speaking about CS experience, I mean, AHQ, they were in the finals. They went against, I have it in my notes right here, Attack All Around. There it goes. I was going to call them AAA, but I wanted to give them the respect that they deserve. 5 maps were played. AHQ came out on top with a 13-8 victory on Haven to close things out. The 13K, pretty big, right? AHQ is also a well-known org. They've been in League of Legends for 8 years. They've been in PUBG, CSGO, and lots of other things. So congratulations to them. And I'm going to be completely honest. If we start seeing more lands in this region, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get on a boat and go over there. That's the stuff that I need in my veins at this very moment. Like, I'm telling you, when I saw them at the desk and they were color coordinated, I lost my damn mind. But this upcoming segment is, I don't know what to expect. This is with Moses. Pretty sure everybody loves him, right? Yeah. Okay. He has an interview with Monty. I personally don't know what it's about, but knowing how his interviews are pretty much always on point, I say we go ahead and take a look, all right? This one is kind of timely, so we'll see you guys in probably about 15 minutes. We'll be in the background watching this as well. So let's throw the video up and let's see what Monty has to say.
So I'll get it from the unbiased source himself, Montecristo. Tell me why you're the best there is in esports, and of course, you know, like everyone knows who you are. Like you know, Overwatch League, League of Legends, but now PopFlash. So I want to hear more about what you've been doing the last year. Specifically, let's start with last year. How's things been going for you?
Good. Ever since I left Overwatch League, I started working at Cloud9, working on some content for them, as well as a bunch of stuff behind the scenes. And I was working on B-Site, which is the company that owns Flashpoint and PopFlash, while I was working at Cloud9. And eventually, it just became clear that my content would be better suited to B-Site as a company. And so I was transferred to work there full time instead of splitting my time between B-Site and Cloud9, at which point I became the commissioner of Flashpoint and the vice president of brand for the whole company. So
okay.
In terms of PopFlash, what I'm doing is I'm serving as a producer on the event. And so I've been working on making sure all the content in the broadcast is there and building out the actual content for the broadcast. So.
Well, I want to talk now a little bit about obviously the upcoming event, PopFlash's first one. So I mean, explain to me. I guess the first question is, why did you decide to keep the team so restricted? I think the first answer I saw was that you wanted to be able to cover all the matches, which hasn't been possible.
Yes.
But how the format and there's this production value. Tell me what we're looking forward to for your event.
Obviously, there was some controversy about the fact that we capped it at 8 teams, but we only have 5 days to run this event. And the kind of our goal with this is to see how it goes as kind of a more traditional esports event. And by that, I mean, we actually show all of the games on the main stream, and we aren't not covering games. We're not doing the Twitch Rivals thing. We're like jumping around from game to game. I also just don't see a point to having 16 teams at this stage for that short of a time window.
Fair enough.
I don't think the scene is developed enough to have that. Obviously, not having particularly FaZe and to a lesser degree 100 Thieves is kind of a bummer. But we didn't even know FaZe had a team up until the week before they announced their event, because they didn't have a complete roster. So we had kind of already locked our teams by that stage, and it wasn't going to be possible to add FaZe, which sucks because I'm friends with Corey and Raucus and Baby Bay, and I love them as players, and I would really like to have them compete. So I personally apologize to FaZe about that, and especially these guys that I've worked with for a long time in Overwatch. So it's just a shitty situation that we only have 8 teams. We also had to prioritize our partner teams because remember, we are a team-owned organization.
Yes.
So this has been planned since June also. So what ended up happening was we didn't know which Ignition Series event we were going to get, and we ended up with the late August one. But there was a possibility that we could have gotten the July one. So what happened for us internally was we said, "Hey, partner teams, we have 8 partner teams. Who is going to have a North American Valorant roster for this event that we're running, and then we will give you those slots." So we had 5 teams say yes. We invited T1 very early on because they were a good team early, but basically we couldn't invite the final 2 teams until we knew how the scene was going to shake up. Because we didn't know who's going to be good by the time we did this event. So we issued our last 2 invites, obviously, to TSM and Sentinels, because they are clearly the top 2 teams in Valorant right now.
Plus the rivalry would be amazing again. That's been so good.
I mean, it would be really shitty not to have them in this event. We thought about running a qualifier, but when we had 2 slots and we didn't have TSM and Sentinels, it was like, obviously running a qualifier is just a waste of these teams' time, because they are clearly the top 2 teams. So we need to invite them.
Yes.
So that was kind of the process of this. But yeah, we wanted to run a robust format. So the format we're running is the 2 groups, A and B. We are going to do GSL groups. So it will be the top 2 teams from each group qualify to a double elimination playoff bracket. Even with 8 teams, we're looking at multiple days with 4 best of 3s, which is an incredibly long broadcast.
Right.
So it was already going to be very difficult with even 8 teams to run this format, much less more teams, right? Basically impossible.
Yeah, no, it would take you forever. Especially if you wanted to do something unique with the broadcast, which is in your case being able to cover all the matches. So in that vein, is there anything, obviously production value and the people you have on talent are all seasoned veterans from various parts of esports. So I would love to know, or maybe there's a little preview you can give us as well. Do you have anything special planned? Because you are going to be live in studio, which I think is going to be, at this stage of the game, pretty rare. So is there something you have?
First time, I think.
Yeah, I think. Well, at least for Valorant, to have everyone in
for Valorant.
Yeah, in studio. So is there anything special you have planned there that you might be able to share?
Well, to be clear, when we say everyone, we mean talent, not teams.
Players. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I wish we could have a LAN.
That would be amazing.
But we can't. That's a little too much to ask right now. So for us, when it came to building out the talent roster, I mean, you've been excellent as well.
Thank
you. We needed people who could be there in person.
I would love to have come, but I don't want to have to spend 2 weeks in quarantine on both ends. This doesn't seem logistically like, yeah.
You know, there are other people in other countries. So we needed to go domestic, basically, for the US for this event. It is a bummer because
that's why I scheduled the interview, is because that was the question I wanted to ask. What the hell, great. Man?
I hope we can work together in the future. Okay. but as far as like international travel at this point in time, obviously like super shitty for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So we couldn't do that. Which is a bummer because there are many other people that we would have liked to have brought on board, but went domestic for this one. And kind of the goal with our talent team is to draw from the backgrounds of the players.
Okay.
So what we're really focusing on is to do a lot of narrative star building, because I think that's something that's been kind of lacking in this game. And it's not a fault of the other people who have run events. They often had to run them at very short notice. They didn't have the in-studio part to be a little bit more dynamic during the downtime. But I really wanted to get people who had deep knowledge of the kind of tier 2 CSGO scene, especially because for a lot of these players like FNS, Wardell, Sub Rosa, their last tournament was Flashpoint. So it was our event. And we want to be able to like talk about how they were in Counter-Strike and how they are in Valorant now, and draw these kind of like really bring people into the background stories of these players. So we wanted some of those people from Flashpoint or from the tier 2 CSGO scene, people like Potter and Maui Snake. DDK was also working on Flashpoint, but he's less knowledgeable, I think, about those specific players.
Right.
But the other aspect of it was we wanted people who knew Overwatch League as well, because we have players like Sinatra, or Doa was there in the early days of Overwatch when Zoms was playing Overwatch as well, pre-Overwatch League. Had we had FaZe, that would have been more relevant also. And the other thing is we want people who have an audience from Riot. So League of Legends, we want to bring in people who watch League of Legends, who know people like Doa and Rivington. Rivington started out actually as an FPS caster.
Yeah.
And so I've seen some of his early Valorant casts that he was doing. I'm excited to bring him in for the first Ignition Series event that he'll be doing. So that was kind of the idea behind all of this, was let's try and also like we also have the Valorant angle. So Puckett, Golden Boy, these guys have been doing a bunch of the Valorant events. DDK did the last Ignition Series event. So, and the other thing is Golden Boy did Fortnite. Psalm comes from Fortnite. Now, obviously, we knew Psalm was going to be in this event because we knew the roster that Dignitas was going to sign. That's now been announced. Yeah, it's now been announced. We're trying to collect all of these different perspectives and really tell the background stories of these players and try and get people more involved, because I don't think star building has been super good yet. And one of the ways we're going to do that is we have a bunch of pre-produced features that are like mini player documentaries that are on a variety of the players that we have in this event, that include long interviews with the players, interviews with people who are familiar with their background from a variety of games. Like for example, we have a Psalm feature coming out. I have interviews from Wolf, who was a Heroes of the Storm caster, casting, who's currently an Overwatch League caster, but he casted Psalm in many of these international events that he competed in. So we're really trying to flesh out that background and history of the player, and then all of that will be inserted into the broadcast so that people get a better sense of where these guys come from. Because I think it's cool. One of the things that was very similar to this in Overwatch is that we had, in the early days of Overwatch, we had all of these players from all these different games like coming in, and so it was very fun to hear about those histories and explore that. And I think that's been something that hasn't been done very much in Valorant yet, but should be done, because a lot of these players have amazing accomplishments already.
So I want to talk about the future. Obviously, you know, this Ignition series, at least your Ignition series, is labeled as the last one, which I think is very interesting and somewhat concerning. Obviously, Riot is of course going to continue the events, but what do you think, and maybe what do you know, is going to be the next step beyond the Ignition series, and what is PopFlash's and B-Site's involvement going to be like, and what are your hopes and dreams for the future?
I mean, I don't know what else that they have planned. Certainly, we don't at this current point in time have any long-term agreement with them. Purely for our reasons, like given Valorant's trajectory, I would love to have more Valorant events. In an ideal world, we would build out our own Valorant creative vertical. So, for example, Flashpoint is our Counter-Strike vertical, right? But if we had some sort of long-term agreement with Riot, we would create an entirely separate brand for Valorant that was much more Valorant appropriate.
Right.
And that's kind of our goal whenever we take on new games, is to build out different brands for them that we could really tailor to the game in question and to the audience in question. Because obviously for us, like, Flashpoint is a very specific product for Counter-Strike that we curse on air. Like, you can say fuck as many times as you want on Flashpoint.
Right.
It's all about like the banter and having, you know, trash talk between players, and it's billed very much as an adult product. Like,
right.
We do not want children watching Flashpoint, period. I don't think we would take that approach with Valorant. Obviously, I think it has a younger audience. I think, yeah, I think it would be very different what we would do, especially in terms of visual identity as well. Like, I don't think that the Flashpoint brand meshes super well with what Riot's doing with Valorant. That's a little bit more futuristic or streamlined. Like, Flashpoint's visual identity is like pretty gritty.
Right.
So I don't know. There's a bunch of stuff that we would like to do, but we would need confidence that if we spend all of that money to do that, that we would be able to run a series of events. And I think for us, it would be great to be one of the tournament operators on a Valorant circuit, just like we're one of the tournament operators on a CSGO circuit. And I think that that's just really healthy in general, because when you have that competition between TOs and production teams, it really forces everybody to get better. Like, we look at Blast and ESL and Counter-Strike, and we learn a lot from them. And I think it's good for the scene to have that competition. So it's not like I want the whole circuit or anything like that. Like, I don't want to be the only person doing Valorant products. But it would be fun to be able to say, hey, for the next few years, we have X number of weeks of the calendar that we get for Valorant. And, you know, we can operate our own formats, and we can create our own kind of identity and work with Riot on the game. So that's what I want. Whether they want that or not, I have no idea. I do think, you know, they've said publicly that you know, they may not do a franchise system, that they may work with operators. And I think you have to look at it in terms of time as well, because when they created the LCS, they were right to do so, because they viewed it as a marketing exercise, and no one could have produced the LCS in 2014 as well as Riot could have, because no one was able to make money off of it back then. So they had to spend more than they made, right?
Right.
So it wasn't reasonable to expect people to run their own businesses and do as good of a job as Riot could have done. That was just where the esports landscape was, right? Is it possible now for people to do as good or better of a job than Riot? The answer is yes. Like, yes, definitely yes. And it's not to say that they couldn't build a great broadcast around Valorant. Surely they could. It's just a question of, do they want that expense, and do they want that headache if they have a number of appropriate partners who can deliver the kind of product that they want, right? So that's their decision that they're going to be making. I hope we can prove that we are a good choice if they choose to continue to use third parties.
It's interesting to see how it's going to develop. So before we shut it down, I want to ask, what are you working on personally? Do you have anything you want to quickly touch on before we let you go? aside from
I've been
PopFlash?
just working on. I've been working on PopFlash and Flashpoint 2 for the most part. Also working on maybe doing another game with B-Site also. So hopefully that will go through. We're looking to continue that expansion. So yeah, just kind of keeping the eye on Valorant, hoping this event goes super well this week, and looking forward to having people watch it, and hopefully people who haven't watched Valorant before.
Absolutely. Well, you can catch Montecristo on Twitter, excuse me, and he's got lots of products out there. We're looking forward to the PopFlash event. I'll be watching from here, and I can't wait to see what you guys do with it. So thank you so much for taking the time, and that's it. I'll see you next time.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to have an interview with you, my second favorite Moses in esports.
Okay, thank you. That's I'm.
He's always gonna be my first favorite. But shout out to Moses, right? That was actually a very interesting interview. So I like the fact that now this PopFlash tournament, this is going to be our most real look at if Valorant had a real event in North America. We're actually going to have a desk. I'm pretty sure they're going to have the studio looking great. You see the invited teams on your screen, but Alex, what are your biggest takeaways from what those two just discussed?
I do. So I was one of those people that are like, oh my God, how come we don't have this team actually competing into the Ignition series, right? Because when you looked at the past number of Ignition series that happened in North America, you always saw like 12 teams, 16 teams, qualifying teams, and then up to like 20 teams that are playing in a tournament. And I do respect the fact that, you know, it was a hard decision to make for Montecristo and for PopFlash, but to be able to do what they want to do. And I think what they want to mainly prove is not only that competition is going to be great, but what they could do on the production side. And I'm just hyped out of that because I'm expecting nothing but to be blown away by the content that they have, the amount of interviews and such that they have in B-rolls to make sure that we're not going to have any downtime watching a timer between two computers or two teams set up in the future. I'm talking about on LAN, right? So the amount of content that they're able to pump to make sure that they engage the audience and keep the audience into the stream. I think I love how Montecristo is building that up from a production value from a production side of things. So I'm excited for that, and now I understand why we're only able to have 8 teams in there, because we want to keep it onto one stream as well. And I do agree, man. Have 4 days, I think, that they have for the Ignition series for what they want to do in a GSL format, double elimination, probably in a best out of 3 for every single match. It's a long week. So to 8 teams, I think it was probably the right number.
Yeah, it's important that you get that format correct, though, as well, right? Because we've seen so many tournaments in Europe where they're just running like BO1s all the way through, and it's just terrible. It's just useless. Like it's useless as a viewer as well to watch it, because you can very easily lose a BO1 to any team. You need that kind of consistency over the course of a longer series in order to make a game like CS:GO or Valorant competitive between the top. So I love this. I'm also super looking forward to the interviews like Monty was talking about, and like you said, Vansilli, the little bits on the player history that they've done in the past as well, because at the moment, and it's no one's fault, it's a product of the scene being young and also everything being online because of COVID, but Valorant has felt very amateurish with the way that these events have been broadcast, because we haven't been able to have access to all of the tools, and people don't have all of that historical knowledge, and people are still getting to grips with the game and understanding nuances about how the teams work, and there's a huge amount to digest and input. So this will be our first opportunity, I think, to get that look into the future of what a more professional tournament of Valorant will look like, and I'm just super excited for it. I'm also looking forward to the talent they've got as well. Like Potter and Maui Snake, I really enjoyed listening to when it came to Flashpoint, and so for them having that tier 2 CS scene knowledge as well to bring to the desk, I'm looking forward to. Also hyped to watch Rivington do his thing as well, because I know he's been putting a lot of time into this game, and this is going to be the tournament that he like gets to deliver and see kind of the level that he's at and what he can bring to the table. So I'm really looking forward to it. It should be very different.
This should be outright the best event that we've had for Valorant so far, in NA especially. So a lot of expectations for it.
Yeah, it should be.
But there's one thing that really stood out to me. I like the fact that he harped on the fact that they want to really dive deep into player histories, you know, teach us about the players, their backgrounds, where they come from, and their personal expectations. You know, Sideshow, you and I, we've worked on Desk as analysts. Vansilli, you've been a Deso, so storytelling has been all about the name of the game for whenever we have had a turn with the microphone, right? So whenever it's kind of like whenever I listen to Sideshow talk about people's Overwatch past, Pansy, educating me about how these players were in CS. I'm learning so much more new stuff about, okay, this is where they came from, this is where they progress, and this is where they should be. And if they don't hit that point now I know as a viewer, that's disappointing. We need that stuff. Like, give us more of it. So shout out to Monty and Moses for that interview. But this is it. PopFlash, let's jump right into it. This is going to be the last Ignition Series tournament in North America. The groups are on your screen, but let's jump into it. Group A, you see the teams. You have TSM, Dignitas, formerly known as Homeless, Cloud9 with their latest addition with Vice, and also Gen G, Vansilli. I'm going to give you the microphone first. How do you think this group is going to turn out, man?
So if we're actually looking at the schedule too of who's playing versus who first in the GSL format, so you're going to have TSM play versus Dignitas, and then you're also going to have Gen G play versus Cloud9. So of course, the biggest highlight of these two matches will probably be the Gen G versus Cloud9 to see who's going to be able to advance. Is it going to be TenZ carrying the team as well? Or is it going to be the Gen G that has their ups and downs in terms of their results, but still has some sort of like their basic structure to see if they could overpower the aggressiveness of like TenZ's play? TSM versus Dignitas, I think it's going to be TSM no matter what. I do love the guys from Homeless, now Dignitas, but not having a fifth yet. I know they've probably been going through some tryouts here and there, but since that roster has been announced, the same day, Lasky tweeted out that he got booted, right? So that means that they don't have that much time to have practice with a new fifth, even if they have to go through tryouts before. Who is that fifth, right? We're looking at so many rosters right now, like Dignitas is missing a fifth, T1 is looking for a fifth, Bloom that just got signed by Space Station Gaming is looking for a fifth player, and I'm assuming at this point that maybe it's the explosion of 100 Thieves that's going to have maybe a couple of those guys maybe split off finally and find homes. Yeah, exactly, right. So they need an opper for Dignitas, and having Venerated would be a great addition, at least to try out for this tournament. But time and time again, TSM has proven that they're that number one team in North America. They've proven me wrong as well when I saw Sentinels on a rise, and we witnessed them on such a great series for the FaZe Invitational, and still saw TSM on top, despite them changing agents, despite them changing in-game leaders, and they're still able to perform and win tournaments. So I see them moving out of group. Between Gen G and Cloud9, that's a toss-up, but I think Cloud9 is going to be able to move ahead.
Really? All right, Sideshow. I'm excited to ask you this. Oh, I'm so sorry to cut you off. It's VMix, man. I swear to God. Now, you've never backed down from predictions. You never backed down from hot takes. You never backed down from nothing, all right? Gen G against Cloud9. Is this going to be where Cloud9 really puts the pedal to the metal and says, all right, we're for real. It's not just TenZ and friends. We're a solid team now. We're going to make it out of groups. Do you think that's going to happen?
I hope they do, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think that Cloud9 historically have not matched up particularly well against Gen G, because Gen G are the kind of structured team that can just trade TenZ out, and then they're just fighting against the other four players. And so generally, if you look at the history, I feel like Cloud9 have performed not particularly well against Gen G in the matches that they've had. Because once you hit that kind of structure, and Gen G are the most methodical, tactical team that we have in North America. They are super readable though as well, which is why they lose a lot of series too. But they can beat top teams, and they match up particularly well against the loose solo style of Cloud9. I hope that Cloud9 prove me wrong and implement a much more structured system to their team, because that's the only way I think that we're going to ever see the best out of TenZ. And I really don't want this guy to just go further and further slipping down the standings. I think it would be a horrible scenario. I really don't want that to happen. And Cloud9 have shown glimpses of it in the past, where like their Haven looked like they actually had some decent strategies and a good understanding of how they played around it. So if they've spent this time really fleshing out their structure and their executes and their strategy, then maybe they'll come out of this group looking like the top two team. But I think that you should expect TSM and Gen G to be coming out of this group. I think that what we're seeing is a slow decline for Cloud9. And unless TenZ has a god tier game, or Cloud9 have really done the work to push their whole game upwards and not just the TenZ factor of it, then I think Gen G have generally been a better team. They are super readable, but Cloud9 aren't the kind of team that make hard reads like that. They still play super loose even against those kind of teams. So this is a really tough group for me, because at the same time as well, you've got Dignitas in this group who, they don't have that fifth player, and they don't have very much time to scrim with them. So I totally agree with Vansilli in that aspect. They should be considered the bottom level team in this tournament right now. But my God, does this team have potential? And they're actually pretty well structured already, and their calling and their movement around the map is also pretty damn good. And if they are playing with some kind of raw fragger on the jet roll, we don't know who that guy is going to be, right? We don't know who's filling in for them. But if whoever they manage to pick up is some kind of star, almost like Dicey's for Immortals, where Dicey's is just a Valorant player that they found like playing ranked. The guy had been playing some fucking Flash game online a couple of months before he was playing for Immortals. So like, players exist, they're out there. So if they have possibly found somebody like that, then, I mean, I don't think there's even an argument that FaZe should have been invited over Dignitas. I feel like this homeless roster, even with a stand-in player, you should expect them to be the 8th best team in North America. They have that kind of potential. So it all comes down to who that 5th player is, but this group could be kind of nasty. Like, we could see some wild upset. I think you should expect TSM and Gen G to come out of this group, but this group, to me, looks so much more dangerous than the other group, because you also have like Cloud9, who can sometimes can just dominate, and they've beaten TSM.
I want to hear about Cloud9, Sideshow. You know what it is? Whenever I think about Cloud9 and we talk about Liquid, what has been said throughout this entire talk show is, yeah, if Scream could have a fucking amazing game. Yeah, if Tims could go off. You know what that's like? Yeah. You might not know a lot about American football. Vansilli knows. This sounds like we're talking about Barry Sanders on the Lions. Just a fucking phenomenal fucking star, right? And just no matter how good that player is, sometimes that's just not enough. The team can't make it. A big change has to be made. Now, if Cloud9 fails this tournament, because this is a major tournament in my personal opinion, do you think if Cloud9 fails, there's going to be definite change? Vansilli, you shaking your head? No. Why not?
I don't think so either.
I mean, they only just officially finally announced Vice, right? This week or last week. And these guys have been playing together since the beta. And I think they have that type of vision or mentality that it's okay to lose because they could progress as a team. This is something that I like too. And that was a take that was actually taken on Twitter. I forgot by who it was, and I retweeted it, but it's like, it's sucky to see that as soon as organizations or players are not performing well, that the whole roster will blow up, or they want to break in to try to bring somebody else and then change and change and change. But you never really see them evolve as a team together, which is I don't know. If we're looking at it, it's still too early to say like the ones that are bottom fragging or the ones that are not playing that well, or the ones that as a team not perform that well, will they do better? How long do we have to wait? We have a few exceptions, right? We have, unfortunately, with 100 Thieves, it was just like not a good storyline to see where they were going with it. But Sentinels, when they first started, right? We all witnessed them not being that great. When they first started, and they even got they got better and better progressively at that point. T1's another one where you thought that they were going to do better in due time, but they're not, unfortunately. But you still have the other end where they could progress and be good. And Cloud9 for me has that roster that's going to be able to do that. So if they don't win this one here, is it going to be in 3, 4, 5 events? I think it's going to be in 3, 4, 5 events more than immediately now.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay. I really like that response, by the way. I was baiting the hell out of it. Go ahead, Sideshow.
I agree with that. And here's the take that you were talking about there, Vansilli, as well.
There you go. Thank you. Yeah.
And I totally agree that some teams are just cutting players all over the place. But the issue is that's a response to them failing to put in the work to build the teams correctly at the beginning, especially when you consider the case of 100 Thieves, which probably prompted that tweet, if I had to guess, because they, pick up a whole squad of PUBG players and add Hiko to it, and then they realize it's not working and they have to throw all the pieces away because of all the fan pressure. Too. Yes, yeah. I mean, Pride is a great player, and Venerated looked like he had some potential as well. I think that it's more of like a symptom of the original problem, which is the lack of thought being put into the creation of the rosters. But I don't believe that like 100 Thieves were wrong for blowing up their team. I don't think that they should have stuck with the entire 5 players moving forwards, because they had already made the mistake. It's not like 2 wrongs make a right. You can't build a bad team and then just stick with them forever and hope that they get better. The mistake was at the beginning in terms of how you built that team, but you have to fix that mistake at some point. Now, I'm not saying that Cloud9 are irredeemable. I think that they are a team that could make slow changes in the future. But I think some kind of change is probably inevitable. But I still agree with Vansilli that it won't happen now because this team has only just finished signing their team. They've just signed twice. So they ain't going to start cutting players now. They're going to wait for a while. So I'm hoping that Cloud9 really starts to flesh out that structured base to allow the team to get better and better so that despite them not having the best fragging team in the world, hopefully they can introduce a real good structure, something like Gen G has, and they can try and work on that and get better. My prediction, though, is not the same as my hope. My prediction is that they slowly slip down and down, maybe not doing particularly well in this tournament as well, and eventually have to make changes like Vansilli was saying.
Okay, we'll see. Now, Group B. Group B, to me, is one of my personal favorites. You're going to have Sentinels, Envy, which is a team that I think are going to be on the up and up, Immortals, and also a team that's been on the opposite of the up and up is going to be T1. Now, before we get into predictions, this is going to be pretty weird, in my opinion, because of the fact that T1, they won't have Skadoodle on board. Vansilli, who are they going to be using, man?
I have no idea. I mean, there were rumors when I was talking about with Fion on Fire that they were playing with EU from the academy team and trying him out. There were rumors that they were actually even practicing with Jason R at that point too. And is Jason R going to be the solution though to play with T1 when Skadoodle used to be the opera, and we kind of know Jason R to be more of a rifler in the CS:GO days. So I don't know what necessarily is going to happen for T1 at this point. I think for this event, because it's so last minute with what Ska was tweeting out, that it's just going to be, hey, let's plug the hole for now. The water's still going to be leaking, and let's just make sure that we make that water, like the debit flow, a little bit less faster until we find the right solution and the right fifth player so that they could actually bring it in on a more permanent basis. And looking at Flashpoint as a big tryout for anybody trying out for Dignitas or anybody trying out for T1, oh my God, man, that's so much pressure.
Yeah.
I even heard rumors that Daves was going to play was practicing with T1.
Really?
But that didn't go out too well in their favor. So I'm not sure exactly who they're going to use. Again, both Dignitas and T1 need an opera for the team right now. And you saw it from the tweet with what Skadoodle was saying. He's trying to build out his agent pool. So I think now looking at T1's composition, they're like, okay, well, we do need to follow that meta. We need a jet opera. And Skadoodle wasn't providing that for us yet. So Skadoodle probably has the opportunity to practice. And that's weird too, by the way. He gets to practice with the other teams while he's trying to build his talent pool. I'm not sure, like, why aren't you practicing your talent pool with the same 4 players that you signed up with? And this is nothing against Tyler. It's just more like, how is this being run right now in the back scene for T1? So a lot of moving parts for T1 in that part. But I do feel for Tyler, for Skadoodle at that point, and I feel really bad for his position.
You would think that with the leaked messages and everything else that, Skadoodle will be on his way out, but it seems like they're giving him a second chance. Go ahead, Sideshow.
I love that.
I mean, I don't think they are giving him a second chance. I think that's all PR speak by the look of it, because it doesn't really make. If it doesn't make sense, then there's probably something else going on, right? Like that's what you see in every esport. If from the outside something just doesn't quite add up, it's probably because they're just not in a position to publicly talk about it yet, and the things are going on behind the scenes, and eventually the final story will come out. It happens all the time in a bunch of different esports, in CS, in Overwatch, all of that kind of stuff. To me, it seems like it's likely that, I mean, Scar already has a contract in place with T1. It seems like they're looking to make some kind of roster move to add in a more aggressive Jet AWPer, because Scar was really passive and didn't have the Jet in his hero pool, particularly in his agent pool, rather. And instead they're saying like, oh, he's just working on stuff and trialing for other teams. I don't know. I would be very surprised if Scar came back. It doesn't really make sense. If he was going to come back, he would be playing with them right now, in my opinion. So the situation is odd.
Interesting.
Very odd.
Yeah.
And I've been... Sorry, go on, Velly.
No. Finish your thought, man.
Well, I was looking at all of the previous T1 games, because I don't know about you guys, but when I have been watching all of these tournaments, T1 are a team that you don't notice them that much. Like they were big at the beginning and then they've had disappointing performances, but they're not the kind of performances where you're like, oh my God, this team is garbage. But they're not the kind of performances really that make you notice them whatsoever. So I deliberately went back over all of their matches and watched them in like minute detail to really like imprint in my brain what the problem is. And they also missed a bunch of tournaments early on as well after finishing second in a couple of tournaments. So you didn't really get like a good idea for where they were at that point. But I think one of the biggest issues for this team is they're all very naturally passive players. So they don't have like somebody who really likes to initiate and get the ball started, apart from Food, who's had to make this swap over to the duelist role. And this is the other problem, is that they've had to make so many role changes to put people in positions where they are comfortable that it has ruined their ability to develop teamwork and executes and defaults, because they're constantly trying to swap the roles to come up with a solution instead of finding comfortable roles and then building upon that. They haven't even settled their foundation yet. So in some sense, it's kind of promising that they still look not total trash whilst making all of these role swaps, because they've moved Brax. It was playing the Raze and the Omen originally, and then he swapped over to playing the Cypher. You had Scar, who was originally playing the Sage and then swapped over to playing the Sova, swapping with AZK, who went Sova over to Sage, and then they started playing a bunch of Sageless stuff where AZK picked up the smokes and Food went over to Duelist. Like, this team has made a lot of role changes where you can't develop that kind of team synergy, and you add into the fact that they're all a bit passive players, and you think as well, right? These guys come from CS, where in theory you can swap around your role on the team without any difference. In the middle of a match, you can say, oh, actually, I would like to entry. I feel like I'm going to be able to entry onto this site really effectively. Well, that doesn't really work in Valorant, because you have a role, you have an agent, and that agent is more effective in certain situations than they are in others. You can't be a Sage and suddenly decide, I want to entry, because you are losing out on all of the ability for Sage in the longer team fights. So in some sense, even though Valorant is like CS plus abilities, you actually have less degrees of freedom in what you can do within the game, because there are better ways of maximizing agent ability. And I think that some of these CS guys are getting stuck in their role and feeling a bit stuck. And so they want to break out, they want a bit of a role shift, but they haven't been able to find the ones that work for them. And T1 as a team right now look a little lost. Like a good IGL to be able to be a bit more decisive in the games, a good aggressive AWPer to give them that entry that they need onto the sites, but also the open. These are the things that they need. But I don't feel terrible about T1. I feel like this is still possible for them to improve and get to a decent level at some point in the future. But they need to figure out their foundation.
Yeah, I was actually looking for the matchups. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Velly. And I was just trying to figure out when this whole thing was happening with who's going to be that new fifth that's going to replace Skadoodle. Wasn't that the same moment in time where they were in talks with Nitro to maybe even try out / join the team too, where he decided to go with 100 Thieves later, probably because he had a way better offer for his salary as well. So that probably made things very difficult in terms of the discussions too. When you're talking about, hey, they need probably a good in-game leader, that was probably a great start to have Nitro in there as like the best North American in-game leader in Counter-Strike Go, and then add them into that aspect for Valorant. But that definitely probably shambled their plans of what they were trying to do. So I think T1 at this point is probably going to still be in like a search mode trying to find themselves. But I don't know if their roster is going to blow up in itself. They need to find probably somebody that's going to help in-game lead and also op jet at the same time. It's going to get quite difficult. I think there has to be some change.
Yeah, so I'm going to run down the matchups. So first is going to be Sentinels versus Envy. Vansilli, what's your prediction on that one, my guy?
So I'm probably going to have to go with Sentinels for this one too, but I do believe that Envy has the capabilities of taking at least a map away from this roster, as they did in the FaZe Invitational at that point. I think they have a really good roster.
Yeah.
They have somebody like Calypso that could actually help out the team to do a double operator setup when they have a defensive side. So it really comes down to the vetoes too, right? Where are they most prominent? Where are they most strong on? And I think the map that they got off versus Sentinels was on Split, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So if they're going to be smart for Sentinels too in the map vetoes, they're probably going to take out Split at that point, where it could very much become a 2-0 at that point for that team. So definitely an underdog story for Envy in this matchup. But I don't expect an upset. I just expect possibly a 2-1.
Yeah,
An
Envy's
upset I
one of
wouldn't
those teams
say
that-
is
Sorry, go on. Billy.
unrealistic. Sorry about that. I was just gonna point out just a fun fact. The last matchup, before their last matchup, they were pretty much ran through by Sentinels. I'm talking about Envy now. Last time around, they lost, 2 maps by what, 3-4 points. So, there's a possibility there for Envy, but it's not really expected.
Yeah, and that's the Envy have actually been making some pretty sincere improvements though as well. They're
100%.
a team that was almost the definition of this loose team that would just run into AWPers constantly and trying to get Mummy to carry with his own AWPing. And then in the FaZe Invitational and in like the week just before that, they made some radical improvements to their strategic play. They've been playing Split as their like default pick, which is great because most other teams hate playing Split or aren't as good on it or have to make significant changes. The fact that they beat Sentinels on Split as well. Split's one of Sentinels' best maps too. Sentinels are insanely good on Split. They're really, really strong there. So this is a team to me that are really making roads upwards, but it would just be an enormous upset if Sentinels fail to make it out of this group. This should just be a slam dunk for Sentinels because they have frequently just beasted Envy and Immortals in the past. Both of those teams are making improvements, but they're not on the same kind of level, at least not across the entire map pool.
Yeah. Now, the reason why Group B is one of my favorite groups is not for the fact that Sentinels are here, but the simple fact that you realistically have 3 teams that can make it, 2 teams that can get that second spot, and that's just assuming if Sentinels gets the first spot. Envy, Immortals, and T1. Let's say we're all assuming, as everyone else is, the Sentinels are going to be the first team out. Who do you 2 think are going to get that second spot outside of Group B? Be honest with yourselves. Go ahead, both of you, just fire off.
I think it should be Immortals. I mean, Immortals have been finishing much higher in the tournament placings than either Envy or T1. And yeah, Envy have made some improvements recently, but I don't think you can argue with Immortals, who've been pretty much consistently like finishing 3rd, sometimes 4th across all of the tournaments that they've played in. They've been able to, they get blown out by TSM and Sentinels, but they basically beat all of the other teams. They have close games against Gen G, but they've actually started to pull ahead of Gen G in the past, in recent history, because Gen G is such a readable team. So the more you play against them, and if you have a good IGL like Stanny, who's now made the shift onto Omen, where he can actually start fragging as well, then Immortals look like they're a team that can maybe start to pull ahead of the rest of the pack. In my opinion, the next big step for Immortals is their ability to contest with Sentinels and TSM. It's not so much them staying ahead of teams like Envy and T1. Like, I feel like if Envy gets out of this group, or if T1 does, it will be a very disappointing result for Immortals, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. Overall, look at the tournament. We've spoken about the groups, but if we had to predict the 2 teams that were going to be in the championship game, who would it be? Vansilli? Who do you think are going to be the 2 main teams this tournament?
It's no question. That's no question. It's
no question.
Just TSM Sentinels at this point for the grand finals, and I'm pretty much I'm going to stick by that too. But I'm going to have to go against you guys though to think that Envy is going to be the one that's going to be moving forward versus Immortals. I love the Immortal guys. I do agree with the fact that they were able to get like top 3, a lots of top 3 finishes. Or at least top 4 when they brought Dicey in and JC Stani came back. And I do see that when he was able to actually play and call as an Omen, he has to worry less about his traps as a Cypher and everything too, and he could actually put numbers. So he's a type of in-game leader that could finally frag, and that's what they needed. And they needed a jet hopper, somebody that's aggressive. They brought in Dicey, and they have a great composition. But when I look at historically between Envy and Immortals, it's just something that Envy has that they're just always able to counter Immortals at that point too. So the last 2 times that they met were in the same tournament, in the same bracket. Unfortunately, it was best of ones in the Knights Invitational, but they were able to take it on pretty one-sided matches or one-sided scorelines. I don't think I saw
best of ones, man, silly.
It's best of ones, but
we know they don't count.
I'm not talking about series. I'm just talking about maps, right? So if they play twice in a row on BO1s, then they play 2 maps at that point, and it was still one-sided no matter what the map was. So I think at that point.
Well, they were both on
I do believe
both of those BO1s were
both on that. Okay. So okay, maybe that could be different at that point, but I'm still going to stick by it. I think Envy is going to be able to beat Immortals here.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's a really interesting point, though,
like Envy a
because
lot.
I think it does come down to what the maps end up being. Because again, Envy have started to become super dangerous on Split as well. And you're right that they have beaten them on Ascent. So unless Immortals are smart with their maps and eliminate at least one of those, because you don't want to be playing both of those against Envy. So as long as they eliminate one of those, then I think I would still favor Immortals. But I can certainly see an argument, especially with how much Envy has improved recently.
Sideshow. So now I got to swing that question over to you. If you had to pick two teams that were going to be your main focus to be in the grand finals for this event, who is it going to be? And I want a good reason why.
Yeah, it's obviously Sentinels and TSM. There's nobody else that's really on that kind of level in North America right now. It just is that easy. Okay. I mean, it's less competitive at the moment. And I think part of the reason why is previously in the past, you would have teams like Gen G and Cloud9 be able to compete at that kind of same level. And Gen G, I think, is the only team recently that's beaten the Sentinels apart from TSM as well. So Gen G have still shown some ability to be able to bring it to them on like maps like Bind, but with Sentinels fleshing out their hero pool and becoming now good at Haven as well, finding a composition that works for them there, they're fully rounded out. And it feels like it would be very difficult for any team to be able to step up. I mean, you are asking for either ridiculous performances from Gen G on an individual level, because they've already got the strats, or you're asking for a massive improvement from Cloud9. Otherwise, Sentinels and TSM are just running away with it. And this, although it's a great rivalry in North America, they are pushing themselves to get ahead of everybody else. And the gap at the moment only appears to be widening.
And sorry, just to add on to that, Velly, since Golden Boy is not here, it's kind of like the Vegeta and Son Goku upping each other every single time, right? So I had to plug that in for Golden Boy.
No. I like that. You know what, Vansilli? I have a question for you before we move on. Yeah. With the skill gap, I mean, just the top two teams just distancing themselves from the rest of the pack, and it is quite apparent at this point. Is there a dark horse this tournament?
Oof.
Is there a team that you think is just going to upset everyone and shock the world? Like, is there that type of potential with any of these teams?
I like Gen G. Okay, I do like Gen G, but I do see Gen G probably like at a third place or something like that. But even then, I had Cloud9 moving forward. So if anything, it's going to be Cloud9 for me on third. I'll have Sentinels on second, and I'll have TSM on top. Again, every time I go against TSM, they're able to just prove me wrong on every predictions that I have versus them versus Sentinels. So Sideshow has something different, though.
I have a theory for you here, Velly. If you're interested in dark horses, then I'm not saying that this is how I would predict the bracket to look, but there's a possibility that something like this happens. TSM usually take a little while to heat up in a tournament. They wait until the very end to pull out proper strategies, like especially when we look at the FaZe Invitational. When they were playing in the group stages, they didn't want to pull out the set comps that they had planned for Sentinels later on in the tournament. So I think, they struggled against a team like Bloom in the group stages because they hadn't quite got online yet. So I think there's a chance that if TSM meet Gen G in that upper final, that they could end up losing and dropping down to the lower, but still getting out of the group. But that would be in second place. Okay. So in theory, there's a matchup that we could see with Sentinels versus TSM kind of early on in that playoff run that could drop one of them to the lower bracket. So in theory, that does open the bracket up for somebody like Gen G to go on a bit of a run. So the way that these GSL groups are structured, even the beginning games are really important for the seeding in the double elim playoff run once you actually get there. So I could see a world where there's a bit of a dark horse run for Gen G, but you are banking on them coming out super strong and TSM looking a little bit wobbly early on in the tournament. I don't think it's going to happen, but I think it's possible.
I mean, a lot of people are thinking otherwise as well. Like the chat, they're going, 3 people just put dig in the chat. I don't know why, but they love them some Dignitas. I do too. But can they make it out of groups? That's another question. I feel like Gen G, they can offer such a good matchup against the elite teams in the game, right? But I still feel like they're beatable when it comes to everyone else, which is just the weirdest thing. But that's consistency. So this is my favorite part of the whole show because I wanted to get to this. Production, get ready. Frod, he was clipped saying some things on his Twitch. And you know what? I'm just going to let you guys hear for it. Just throw it up on the screen. This is really good. So
it doesn't matter. And they won't. First of all, there's no millionaires in this game, and second of all, they won't because G2 or Liquid won't even get top 3 in a tournament here. Like, if you really think that G2 and Liquid are going to get top 3 in tournaments here, or top 2, or win tournaments here all the time, you're fucking out of your mind.
Okay, so if you think that clip is just fucking crazy, because it is fucking crazy, it was quote tweeted by Artist, and Artist says, what the fuck is this guy on? I can name at least 2 bad players in any top NA team. You cunts can even get double digits versus any top 5 EU team. There is a lot to unpack here. There's a lot to unpack
That's
here.
amazing.
Now, you have someone from T1 saying how the top team in Europe won't get top 3 in NA. That in itself is funny to me, but Vansilli, what are you thinking right now, man? This is a lot of craziness going on.
I think it just continues to open the door of like, who's that top team in the world, right? Is it going to be TSM? Is it going to be Sentinels? Is it going to be G2? I love that it still adds fuel to the fire. Again, we love how vocal Artist is too, and I love the trash talk, and I love that we have those type of characters in this scene, and it just adds more to the storyline. But to be honest, on the hot take from Frod, I do disagree. I think G2 could definitely win some North American events consistently.
Okay,
probably not. Consistently, probably not, because I think when we're looking at the Sentinels and Sentinels and TSM kind of one-upping each other, I could see probably like the G2 wants to get into this mix, the Fun Plus Phoenix wants to get into the mix, then we'll start seeing the one-ups from these 4 organizations to see who's really that number 1 in the world. So I think that Southeast Asia still has some catching up to do to see who's going to be that number 1 team. But for NA in Europe, when you're looking at these 4 organizations, it could be still anybody right now. So I can't wait for this to start. And even on that, why can't we not start having Ignition series or something like that for even the UAE? I mean, Turkey, or even just for Turkey itself. Turkey freaking has like 120 teams playing qualifiers all the fucking time. They have 60,000 viewers watching CNN and everybody else from BBL whenever they're playing. They have such a huge scene for Valorant. And we even had rumors in the beta days that CNN, I think, was going to join Fnatic when Fnatic was in the talks of maybe picking up a team or whatnot. So there is potential in that too. Maybe they're just waiting to be like the guys that are going to leave. They're going to leave Turkey and play for the international scenes that we kind of see right now in CS:GO. But they need to get something there. But back on that topic, the hot take right now from Frod, G2 could win some, but not consistently.
Frod was on his shit.
Frod was on some shit.
Frod was on his shit.
I mean, it seems from that clip, I don't know the context of it. He was talking about millionaires. I assume someone in the chat was saying they were going to win so much they were going to become millionaires or something. I guess I don't really understand what the context of that part was. It seemed like Frod was having a bad. Oh, maybe salaries, right? It seemed like Frod was having a kind of bad day, though. He seemed a little snappy. So I hope everything's going all right there. But I don't. I mean, if he doesn't think G2 are going to be able to make top 3, who does he think is going to beat them? Because in my opinion, it's only TSM and Sentinels that look like they could even compete with G2. There isn't okay. Gen G are pretty well structured, but they are so damn readable. And something that the G2 team is so good at is making hard reads on opponents and just punishing them heavily for it. So I don't really see a team in North America that would even be able to contest G2 apart from that top 2 of TSM and Sentinels. So for top 3, absolutely. I think that's a ludicrous claim that they couldn't make top 3. And even then, I think the G2's got the firepower to be able to win tournaments in North America for absolutely
against anybody.
I do want to say though, I mean, TSM and Sentinels are very good teams though. I think if you had asked me this question 2 months ago, I would have definitely said that Europe was miles ahead. Miles ahead. But TSM and Sentinels have really pushed themselves. EU, miles ahead. I think so. The formation of G2 immediately put them ahead. Yeah, because the North American teams had really at that point not developed themselves at all. TSM was just slaughtering the region by just Wardell AWPing, and that's all he was doing. But they've really pushed each other to develop much more of a strategic foundation, good counterplays, like the rotations. Hazed has come online as well, when previously I think Artists would have been tweeting about him as one of those 2 bad players on TSM. But the fact that TSM and Sentinels have pushed each other puts them in that same kind of category as G2 for me. At the same time, though, it is really funny to me to see Artists talking about the top 5 in Europe, because Europe as well kind of drops off once you get past that top 4. They've done a large Europe's been great at putting rosters together to form super teams or to form kind of super teams. They put Scream into Liquid. They put the G2 roster together, which is nuts. FPX is obviously a blend of Fabrican and then Party Parrots. And you have NIP, who was the Hip 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 team, plus another couple of pieces that were around the scene from NIP. So those top 4 teams have been really well constructed. Outside of that, though, there does seem to be a drop-off where now you're talking about like Bonk, who are really still trying to get their pieces together. And even in the top 4 teams, you're talking about like FPX, who haven't really come online yet in the same way as like their potential indicates. So the European scene is still brewing. It's still not reached its final form, whereas NA is kind of a bit more set in stone. So I still don't think that Europe has a incredible depth. They have an incredible potential, but I don't think that's been fully realized yet. So I think Ardis is a fantastic trash talker, but I also think that his take is also just hyperbole and wrong as well.
Yeah. Like I said, once COVID, Corona has been a bitch lately, but the moment we could get that first international land, Valorant is going to blow up tenfold. But gentlemen, this is pretty much the end of the show. I'm going to give you all the go-ahead to pretty much have just your last thoughts, get anything you want off your chest, say whatever you want to viewers and fans to just, what may you have it. Vansilli, I'm going to start with you, man. What are you thinking?
Boys and girls, make sure you wear your masks so we could actually get to our first international event. And I think at this point, I've been starving a LAN event that I don't even care what game we're going to have. If it's going to be League of Legends World that comes first, or if it's going to be CSGO or Rainbow Six or freaking Fall Guys at that point, I'm going to that fucking LAN. So make sure you guys wear your mask so we can get back into that scene as soon as possible. But with that, thank you so much for having me, Velly. Thank you to Valoranting as usual. Do not peak. And it's been a blast working with you as well, Sideshow. I'm looking forward to do more with you guys.
Yeah, man. So I've always wanted to work with you, man. You're an all right guy. I don't care about what nobody else says about you. Sideshow, what's your thoughts, man?
Thanks, bro.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to PopFlash. I think it's going to be a great opportunity to see these NA teams play and battle it out, and hear a bit more about the backstories of all of these players as well. I mean, one of the players that was mentioned was Sam, who has that Fortnite background. Yes. I'm waiting for someone to do a PopFlash kind of thing, but in Europe as well, because my God, someone needs to talk about this guy Zipan a bit more. People need to really focus on Fun Plus Phoenix because they are coming. They are going to be good. And when they suddenly appear as a top team and they're at LANs and they're beating these North American teams, people are going to be talking about this Fortnite kid Zipan. And my God, you need to be aware of them, because they are coming and they are going to dominate the game. This new wave of talent, like Sam, like Zipan, like Dicey's, who's just a Valorant-only player, they are coming. They are coming fast.
Yes. Say it again, man. You know what? I said it last time.
Louder in the back.
You know when you make that take that no one else has said before, you're like, okay, do I sound like a dumbass? Like, but the show is over with? I felt that way. FPX has talent. I've just... When they blow up, remember this episode right here, okay? Make sure you clip this shit and just spam it on Twitter. Make it go viral. Tweet it to the players. It's going to happen, I guarantee it. But I'm going to be honest. I had a lot of fun hosting this podcast. I know Moses has been doing a fucking fantastic job. I know my voice isn't as deep as his or anything else like that, but I definitely miss him. I miss Pansy. But either way, we always have fun on Valorant. I want to thank every single person out there for tuning in, taking valuable time out of your day just to hear us just chat some bullshit about Valorant. And make sure you tune in next week, same time, same place. And from Vansilli and Sideshow, and also from me and the productions crew, I want to say thank you, and I hope you all have a good day. And wear your damn mask.